So students, we're in the Elements of Art module, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a video of the PowerPoint that I made for shape. I think that the other elements, the PowerPoints I did, are self-explanatory, and there's excellent little videos. Use your worksheet to find the information. You need to watch all the videos to get some information. But I wanted to show you how I've laid out these PowerPoints for each element. So shape, like line, texture, value, etc. These are elements of art. And first, you do have a definition. Shape is two-dimensional form that is defined by its boundaries or its edges. And all the elements have characteristics. Let me just say that everything is expressive. Every element, textures are expressive, colors, everything is expressive. And then you have some specific characteristics, like the characteristics for shape are, it has width, and length, this hemisphere right here. Are these little shapes, little triangles, they have widths and lengths. And also they're characterized by the type of shape. So there's different types, and we'll look at those. And although my little video here is hiding this last characteristic, shape has the ability to establish direction, movement and direction. So you see this is going upward like that. This doesn't have direction, that circle is just sort of floating. These little triangular shapes, it's going upward. And so if I were to look at this analytically, everything in the top part of this design here is going upward with these points, but the bottom here is like a hemisphere, and this is sort of pointing, this semicircle, right, half of it is pointing downward. So that's how I would be looking at it as an artist. So in each PowerPoint then, you're going to have its characteristics of the element, the definition, and certain types. So in this one, there are types of shapes. Now, you're going to know several of these. Organic shape, shapes from nature. Geometric shapes, circles, triangles. Planular, plane structure is, I've talked about that. A plane structure is showing a three-dimensional form, top plane, side plane. Then you have these shapes that you don't know sort of what category to put them in, and we just call these sort of invented. Just a mix of maybe organic and geometric. Call them invented shapes. And then we've already talked about this. You do have positive and negative shapes. This always is relevant. Now, what you're going to see with line as well as shape are these two terms, implied and explicit. It's important that you know these. Explicit shape is those shapes that you can see. They are present. It is a circle. It is it's defined by its edges. But then we have implied shapes or implied lines. This is actually very important for creating balance and composition. And we're going to look at examples of those. So an implied shape is a shape that's not really there. It's created by what's around it. So it's not really there but perceived to exist. And we'll look at that. It's not as tricky as it sounds. So what we have here are, I'm asking you what different types of shapes are in this design. And you have to take a moment to look at this, because there is, as I look at this, I see, this is an implied shape right here. You see this square where my cursor is? Here's a triangle, but it implies that it's a square. That's implied shape right there. This is an explicit shape. This is actually an implied shape right there, that background. And this is a positive, this is a negative. This also right here is an implied square. It's implied because this side and these lines and this line, that line, and that creates that perceptual square that's not actually there. And I would say we have geometric types, and we do have negative and positive shapes. This is a negative or implied triangle. This is also an implied square. Yeah. So here is, did you find these shapes? Yep. So this is just a little sample, little test for you to make sure you can apply the different types of shapes. And we just can go through this quickly, and I've given you examples of just designs. Now we're not talking about ways to create space, which we could. We're actually just looking at specifically types of shapes. And what do we have here? You know, we've got certainly a variety of shapes. Variety is a principle of design. That'll be a little bit later. But it looks like we have geometric shapes, we have organic shapes, we have certainly positive shapes, we have negative shape. I think we have negative shapes too. I think this negative space shape here is relevant. Yeah. Organic, geometric, implied, yeah, all those things. So on this one, you know, I would say you certainly have some organic. You have, I don't see any implied. I see all explicit shapes, organic. You could say some are invented, and you have positive. I don't see a lot of, I don't know, this could be construed as a negative shape, but I think that's a color, so I would say different than the background, so I would say that's an explicit positive shape too. Yes. Well, I have to correct myself. Now that I look at how I answered this background is a negative shape. If this shape right here, this figure with all these fun things on it and these flowers, if that was one solid color, or if this was all black and this was white, or the background here was white and this was black, one black shape, then the background is definitely a negative shape. So am I looking at this? I would just say certainly there's implied shapes, explicit shapes, and I would say definitely positive and negative. This artist is playing off, his name is held off positive and negative, and these are geometric. Yes. So I've got a planular structure. Interesting. Well, you know, I said that plane references sculpture, but I'm going to apply this right here, because when you have an illusion of a three-dimensional object, you could call that plane, or you could call it shape. And I don't mean to confuse you here, but in thinking about this work, you know, I think plane, although I list it with the three-dimensional, I think it could be applied, but certainly shape would always apply. Plane in a two-dimensional work does not apply if it is not implying that it is three-dimensional, though. You know, you could use either one there, but definitely you would use it if it's three-dimensional and sculpture as planular. So here's some sculptures, and I would say here's a good example of plane, which is shape. So you have positive plane, you have negative right here, negative, and this is implied plane right there, or excuse me, implied shape, explicit shape or plane, plane, could be shape. This right here is an implicit shape or plane. So you do have positive and negative. So what do I call this? Do I say it's organic or invented? You know, it's so sort of wonky. I want to call that geometric, but I think it's also invented. Oh, so here I've just darkened what would not apply, and I took out invented, but that's okay. You know, this is debatable. Yeah, so you do see implied, explicit, planular structure. These are geometric and positive and negative. I would still say it could be invented, though. I wouldn't call that obviously organic, though.